Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of The Numbers. I'm Eric Grenier and joined as always by Philippe J. Fournier. Philippe, how are you doing these days?
Good morning, Eric. I feel much better. Last week, for those who remember, I was under the weather and I had this sexy voice. Feeling much better this week. Lots happening in the news. Lots happening in Quebec. We'll get to that at some point. But what about you? How's everything, Eric? You're holding on tight?
I'm maintaining my sanity as things go forward, so that's good. Looking forward to the holidays, which just feels like it's coming very quickly, but not quickly enough.
Oh, it's coming. Yep.
Yeah, and we're gonna maybe do something fun next weekend or the weekend after, right? Might go to the Quebec Solidaire convention because it's in Gatineau, just across the river from me. So we'll see how that goes. But
just across the river, and we'll have. I'm pretty sure we'll have a recordings for our members live from the Quebec Solidaire convention. They will choose their new female co-spokesperson, and also the Quebec Solidaire has not been doing well in the polls, and so there might be some tension. And from past conventions, we know that delegates of Quebec Solidaire can be very passionate people. So it's going to be a fun time, but we'll talk more about that next week.
Yeah, we'll have to avoid any of that, try not to get eaten alive, I guess, by the rabid members. But we'll talk about. I don't want to get sidetracked on it, but yeah, there's been a lot of kind of infighting, it seems, over the last little while. So, I know fights might break out. Probably not in Quebec Solidaire, but anyway. Yeah. Anyway, let's move on. Let's move
federal
on to
numbers.
Federal numbers, because we got a few that we should talk about. So there was the numbers that came out from Abacus Data, which had another big lead for the Conservatives: 16 points, 41 for the Conservatives, 25 for the Liberals, 19 for the NDP. There was a Nanos poll that came out, and it had the Liberals and the NDP only 2 points apart for third place or second place, I suppose.
Yeah.
And I don't know. What do you make of these numbers? We'll start with the voting intentions ones because we did have some polling on some other issues as well.
Yeah, it's strange. Usually, voting intentions is the first thing that I look at, and then you look at the other more granular data that we have. But it's not very different from what we've seen in the past, I would say, 2 months. It reinforces, what was it, 15 points again in Ontario? That's right there. That's a crushing majority for the Conservatives. But for me, it was the government satisfaction and the Trudeau approval that were way down. And those numbers continue to slip. And we may be sounding like a broken record, but we've wondered in past podcasts, Eric, how low can this go? At some point, you have to reach a new point of equilibrium where, a majority are unsatisfied. We know that. But 58% people disapprove the federal government. Only 16% of respondents in Abacus poll want the Liberals re-elected. Those are incredibly dire numbers for the Liberals, and you have to wonder if it's so deep that at some point there's no going back, right?
That's kind of the issue. I was asked recently, how worried should the Liberals be about this? And it's hard to say anything other than they should be really worried about these numbers. It's true they have 2 years and everything. If this was September 2025, I'd say pack it up, go home, you're done. Here it's more or less get to the mattresses. The Liberals are in a lot of trouble. The numbers you mentioned, though, for the that question that Abacus puts out information for now and then, it seems like because they have a chart going back, they ask it every time. Yep. But time for change or re-elect Trudeau. So there was 16% said it was time to re-elect the Liberals. 52% said time for change and there's a good alternative. And then there's this other number, the 32%, that say time for change, but there isn't a good alternative.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of those people, just based on the voting intentions, are not voting for the Liberals. But it does suggest there is some discomfort with the other options. So maybe some people aren't too enthusiastic about the Conservatives. Some people might not be too enthusiastic about the NDP, but they're voting for them anyway. You put the 32 and the 16 together, you got 48. That's more than you need, but the Liberals aren't going to get all of that. But no, it's the core is just so small that it's hard to add and add to a core that is already so low, right? Because if you're getting 16% support as your base core support, I mean, you need to double that in order to just still be in contention.
And we are at the point where the Conservatives, I know it will sound weird to say, but the Conservatives don't need to grow anymore. They just need to hold, right? When they were at 37 or 38, you always say, well, if you want to make sure you get a majority, you want to have some room for maneuver. But at this point, if you're in the low 40s, the last one to get 40% in the federal election was Jean Chrétien, and it was against a split right, but he still got 40%. Harper didn't do that. Trudeau didn't do that even in his first election. So for Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives, you look at these numbers and you say, okay, we got our base. If we keep this 40%, we will be invincible. Even if the Liberals manage to completely wear down the NDP and take 3 or 4 additional points from them, there won't be even close to us. So it's going to change the dynamic of the next 2 years, because you wonder, again, how does a comeback work? 15 point down in Ontario, double digits down in Atlantic Canada. You're still not dominating Quebec. The Liberals are doing okay in Quebec, just under or just above 30%, but that you don't make gains from that. you don't overcome losing 50 seats in Ontario by maybe maintaining Quebec. So, but did you take a look at the federal voting intention by age? We've seen this many times in recent polling, that the Liberals basically are losing in every age group. Sorry. And when you look at the younger cohort, they're still doing okay, 26%. They're tied with the NDP. They have 29. The Liberals, the Conservatives are in first. But now the Liberals are even losing the older voters, which they seem to be able to hold on to them in recent polling. So in this abacus, 60 and over, 46% Conservatives and 27 Liberals. You can't lose seniors by 19 points and do okay in an election. That just can't happen.
Yeah, this is one of the things that's a bit different from some of the other polls, because you had seen that the Conservatives were more or less had roughly equal support among the different age groups, and it was the Liberals who were having more support over older voters, less among younger. And this instead is more what we've seen in the past, where the Liberals have about the same support among different age groups, and the Conservative support increases as people get older, which is probably the better place to be in. I know we've talked a lot about how the Conservatives have reached out to young voters and getting new people involved in politics, but let's face it, even if turnout among young people is up, still going to be really low, almost certainly. So if the Conservatives are instead getting back among older voters, then that's better for them, right? Because those people are more likely to turn out, which means that we get back to the scenario where you would almost expect the Conservatives to be able to beat their polls rather than to kind of match them, which is what the Liberals were able to do because of how their vote broke down. So we'll see if other polls are going to show this, because that would be one of the big differences from what it's been over the last couple of months. But it's not a bad development for the Conservatives. I know a lot of people would say that the new voters that they're bringing in are really interesting for them, but if you're trying to win an election, you'd rather have the 16 over on your side.
Oh, absolutely. There's no question. And if I may add, there was also a Léger poll and adjacent to the Nanos poll, the preferred prime minister question. I think not a lot of people talk about this one. It's not as popular an indicator as others. But we've seen in the Nanos numbers, M. Poilievre slightly taking a lead. It was in August, I think, when they were tied, and then M. Poilievre took a lead of a few points. Now we have 2 polls asking the same question. In your opinion, which federal party leader would make the best prime minister? And Nanos has 34 Poilievre, 21 Trudeau. Léger has 27% Poilievre and 17 Trudeau. So we're talking about double digits here. If only 17% of Canadians really want Trudeau as a prime minister, not only are the Liberals cooked, but Justin Trudeau's magic cannot overturn these numbers because he himself is not as popular as he once was. The way he took the party on his shoulders against Scheer, against O'Toole, it doesn't look like it's possible anymore to do that. But
he's not more popular than his party, right? Which is especially because when the best prime minister ones always have options for I don't know or none of the above or something like that, and so you have to compare it to the voting intentions before you take out the undecideds, but. You look at Singh's number in the Léger poll, they have 16%. Poilievre at 27%, suggests he might be a little bit less popular than his party. But for Trudeau to be at 17, he's well behind, I think, where the party would be. So he's not pushing them forward or maintaining their support, I would say, anymore, right? There is the idea that if he was gone, the Liberals might do even worse. Because in the summer, like you said...
Yeah.
The Liberals had moved behind the Conservatives by several points, but on the Nanos poll, at least, on Best Prime Minister, they were usually still tied.
Yep.
But that's just no longer the case. So it does seem that, Trudeau's not a plus for the party like he used to be.
I know it's a perennial question, but in your opinion, does that change for the timing of the next election? I mean, we've discussed now how well the Liberals are down, so they will go the distance if they can to wait it out as long as possible. Is it sustainable to keep for 23 months again? The Liberals, a very unpopular government right now. I'm not sure how. I don't think we have a precedent from this. I'm trying to think of a recent precedent. When was the last time a government that was so unpopular that still had 2 years to go and managed to go the distance?
Well, I mean, there was the Mulroney government, which was unpopular for a long time.
Yeah.
But that was a majority government, right? So they could run out the clock, which they did. They went more or less as long as they could, the full 5 years. For this case, it's you have to wonder how an election would happen, though. I think that's the issue. Is that the NDP, for all its saber rattling, it's unlikely that they would really want to risk an election. There's just very little for them to gain, even if they're losing lots of face supporting an unpopular government. And then there's the Bloc, right? There was reporting, I think it was by Joël Denis Bellavance recently, that the Bloc more or less said, we don't want an election, we're not going to force an election. Right? So there's two partners there that they have. And it's hard to imagine a scenario where both the Bloc and the NDP feels like it's a good time to have an election. At least one of them won't, right? So if the Liberals do want to, I feel like they can last until the end of 2025. It'll be a roller coaster that's on two wheels and that kind of thing. But I think that they can hang on forever.
The Bloc is
forever legally.
Well, yeah, legally, yeah. The Bloc is a toxic partner, though, for any party, because.
But it's one thing to be a partner, and it's another thing just to not vote the government down.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah,
the Bloc could abstain, or could reluctantly say they're going to keep them out because they don't want the Conservatives' environmental plan to come in, something like that. There's ways to keep that distance. Without being seen as a partner.
That's true. However, I'm less confident than I was 4 months ago that the government will survive the next budget because these things can happen fast. Even if it's not in their best interest, we know that sometimes when you're on the floor and politics can be emotional and you can go outside the irrational thinking that you and I just sit here in our basement talking about the numbers and politics. I think, well, I am, but figurative basement. Then, how are they going to pass a budget? So I don't know. It's I feel like a 2024 election is not as crazy as it once was. Let's say, even though. Again, it doesn't look like the economy will pick up that fast. Interest rates, we'll see how it goes. But I don't think the short term is a good look for the economy. But
What would you give the odds then? What would you give the odds that we have the election on the scheduled date in October 2025, percentage wise?
Okay, so fall 25. I would give it maybe a little more than 50%. So I would say it's the most likely scenario, but I don't think it's a slam dunk because things can happen, and this government is... I mean, if the numbers keep slipping, because we haven't seen, again, the new equilibrium point, we haven't seen it yet. Can a government govern with a 25% approval rating? Can a prime minister stay there if 70% of voters want him gone? At some point, if you're in the Liberal team, you have to do something. And I know Justin Trudeau just went on Bell Media. It was on with Michel Bérère of Nouveau, just clearly stating, "Oh yeah, I'm staying for the next election. I made up my mind a long time ago." And it was a very candid interview. It was very interesting. But I kept thinking during that interview, like, yeah, it might not be your call. If your MPs at some point say, look at those charts. Justin Trudeau, how can he stay that long? So I don't know. We'll see.
The thing is, though, if he is, unless he's decided he's going to go, he has to say he's 100% in it, because the moment he would say anything that suggests he's considering stepping aside, then he's done.
That's true.
That's it.
That's true.
Then everybody just so he has to maintain his option open of staying, because as soon as he says, well, we'll see how things go, then he's done. He's cuffed and he's got to go. Like, there's no way that you can come back from that. So I think that's probably one of the reasons why he keeps saying that. But I would probably give it more like 90%. I still feel like I just feel like like the submarine, you got to launch the nuclear missiles, you have to put both keys in. There's 3 keys that have to turn, and I just don't know if there can be 3 parties that will defeat the government. The Liberals could be stupid enough to call another early election, which to me would be stupid. Like after the 2021 example. Oh yeah, that's true. The fact that every move that the Liberals are making now is being cast in the light of desperation. Yeah. If they called an early election, like that would just be electorally assisted aid in dying. Like it would just be the stupidest thing. So, but you can't rule out people doing stupid things.
Oh no, especially groups of people that convince themselves that no, maybe we're smarter than other people. Did you see that also the satisfaction number? Just to go back to the Léger poll here. So 82% of Liberals remain satisfied, but when you break it down by very satisfied and somewhat satisfied, 16% are very satisfied. Those are Liberal voters. So, and those are remaining Liberal voters. Those who are still there in the poll. Yeah. Softening of
not
support.
A lot of enthusiasm.
No. I don't think that many of those remaining Liberal voters wouldn't necessarily jump ship and go to another party, but they could do like in 2011 with Michael Niareff and just, you know what, I'm going to watch the game tonight and then vote. So
there was a question about whether Trudeau should resign. And nationally, I never care what the numbers say nationally, because whatever, you can just look at the other numbers. But among Liberal voters, and again, these are people who are voting Liberal now, 24% said he should, 58 said no, and there was 18 that were on the fence. So there are a lot of Liberals themselves who are doubting it, and it goes with just what you said, right? There's not a lot of enthusiasm behind the government. But again, like if they end up with a worse leader, they'll be in a worse place, right? So,
and we know from the past. I mean, I remember the 06 election when the Liberals lost. They were like, oh yeah, no, we'll be back on the trail, on a track in 2-3 years from now. They sometimes when you lose power, you can lose it for a decade or more, and it could take a long time for the popular opinion to switch back to you to your favors. And you have to find a popular leader, which is not easy for the Liberals. You have to find somebody who speaks really great French, is a francophone, preferably not mandatorily, but preferably. And I don't think there's a huge line of potential candidates here. So, oh well.
Why don't we move on to this other poll that came out? Change topic a little bit. It was about the carbon tax and the carve-out that the Liberals brought in. This was by the Angus Reid Institute. This was just out Thursday morning. We're recording this on Thursday. And, you know, there's a couple things that I thought were interesting. They had just like support for the carbon tax was about 45% who said they strongly or moderately supported it, and 56 said they oppose it. Which I'm actually surprised that the opposing numbers weren't as big as that. But there are certain things about this that I think are interesting, right? Because so there was a question about, to the best of your knowledge, have you or your household received a carbon tax rebate over the past year? 63% said that they thought they did. I'm not sure what the actual number of the amount of people who get it is.
63.
And this was, I think they limited it to the places where it's actually given. It's not
okay.
Yeah, because then I thought about that. But then the question I thought that was really interesting, because I pay the carbon tax? I live in Ontario. Do I have any idea how much of the carbon tax I pay? No. It's like it's not like a little line item on my receipt, right? I have no idea how much I pay, but I do get a rebate. And the question they asked was, do you feel that the amount you receive is more or less than what you pay in the carbon tax? 14% said I got more back in rebates that I paid in carbon taxes. 13% said I just break about even, and 54% say I pay more.
That's
but impossible. I'm pretty sure that the budget officer has said more or less like 80% of Canadians get more out of it, right? So it just shows the perception of this, because the reality is that most of the people who said they're not getting more in the rebates are wrong, but they don't know it. And that's kind of what's fueling a little bit of people's views of it. So I thought that was an interesting way to look at this.
There's also, we have to also be careful here. There's been a lot of rage farming and provocation and misinformation about the carbon tax. And we're not here, Eric and I, to defend or promote this carbon tax, but we can see there's been a lot of bullshit argument about it, and from elected officials and from some media that completely disinform what it does and how it works. Those numbers, I think, are so interesting to show the perception again. If half of people who pay the carbon tax feel that they pay more than they receive, that's numerically wrong. That's not true at all. But this is how they feel, right? So
it shows the Liberals have lost
absolutely
that public relations battle.
Absolutely, and this you could argue also that this carve out that they did for not only but for mostly Atlantic provinces, how much of a blunder that was. Like, you have a policy that is not popular, and then you defend it for 2 years or 3 years. And then at the slight problem in the polls, you just say, "Oh well, we'll do that. We'll just give them a little bit so they can be satisfied." But the Conservatives mostly argue that a carbon tax increases the cost of living, whereas it's not numerically the case, right? Those who pollute a lot, those who consume a lot of fossil fuels and other things that pollute, they pay a little more, but most of the people get more than they receive. But they've lost that fight. So IRP, the carbon tax in this country, I'm not sure what it will be replaced by. I saw those T-shirts at the Conservative Convention. Axe the tax. It rhymes. It's a beautiful slogan. But I think that tax will be gone the first day the Liberals are out of power. They've lost the communication battle.
You said one thing, and I just want to note it because I didn't actually realize this, but while Atlantic Canadians are most likely to use home heating oil, there are actually more people outside of Atlantic Canada that use home heating oil in just the sheer numbers. It's very small percentages, like 4 or 5% in Ontario or whatever. But the actual number of people who use home heating oil outside of Atlantic Canada is bigger. It's only about like 25%, I think I saw, of the entire amount of households that use home heating oil are in Atlantic Canada. Now that's nearly 4 times their proportion of the population. So it's disproportionately in Atlantic Canada, but it isn't. But so anyway, that's another thing. This public relations battle is being lost on that, because while it's certainly going to impact a higher percentage of Atlantic Canadians than other Canadians, but just in terms of the sheer number of it, it's actually more people outside of Atlantic Canada. So I thought that was interesting. Now, I don't know, I can't remember what the numbers, how many of those people were in like BC and Quebec, and so it doesn't really matter.
Right.
But anyway, that's an interesting little asterisk I wanted to add.
There's also the question, which of the following statements is closest to your view? And I'm going to read the statement here. Fighting climate change should come first, even if it increases the cost of living for some Canadian household. Or, cost of living concerns should come first, even if it damages policies to fight climate change. This is, I think, the most depressing chart I've seen in a long time. Because again, fighting climate warming, global warming, you cannot do it without some sacrifice, without some effort. And our politicians, instead of leading the way in this, they've decided, you know what, we're just going to comfort people and say, no, nothing's going to change. We'll do the transition at some point. Not now, of course, but in the future. When you look at the numbers, 63% say cost of living should be first before climate change, as if climate change is not going to cost us in the future. Oh, like, I don't know, those wildfires that we had. 27% say climate change should come first. And when you break it down by party, by federal vote in 21, we have unanimity on the Conservatives. 91% to 4 favor the cost of living, whereas in other parties, it's like split down the middle. It's like 50-50. I see the Liberals 45-43. The NDP is 46-42. That's saying that climate change should come first. Again, confirming this battle has been lost. Canada is not going to do its part to fight global warming, because I look at this and I say, we may had a chance at some point in the past, but we've lost it, and we won't do anything for the next decade because of that. So
there is really two points of view on this, right? Because you have, as you said, the Liberal, NDP, and Bloc numbers are almost all identical.
Yep.
Right. So there's those three parties see, or at least the supporters of them, see things in a similar way, and they're divided on it. And then Conservatives are completely not. They're very clear on one side, which I find is an interesting thing, because if you're Pierre Poilievre, it's clear who you have to talk to, right?
Yeah.
If you're the other parties, even your own coalition of voters is split between whether you should put climate change first or cost of living, right? So they're in and they're also splitting that vote, right? They're also splitting the climate change first vote. So it just shows that the Conservatives are very well ensconced on one side of the debate, and they don't. When you look at numbers like this, they don't need to worry about it. They're fine with being on that side.
Scientifically, this is a disaster. I know people would say, aren't you an astrophysicist? Yeah, I'm a physicist also, and I did a lot of classes on climate when I was at university, and even then it was the late 90s and early 2000s, and the scientists there knew then, like, oh, this is, if this keeps up for 25 years, it's going to be really bad. I think the politics has lost. The scientists would try their best to convince people that we had to transition. It's not happening. It's too bad. We will, in the future, we will regret this at some point. Or not. We'll see. But
well, I'm pretty sure we'll regret it.
Some people
I don't have much faith. I don't have much faith anyway.
Oh,
but,
yeah. It's really hard not to be a cynic here. I'm fighting it. But
and you know what? We're talking about parties and politicians, and I mean, Canadians have to own up to it. You look at the poll here. When it comes to the 2030 emissions reductions target, Canada should keep working towards them, 54% say.
Yeah.
But also, don't worry, cost of living, I can't afford it, and get rid of these measures in place. So people would like not to have climate change, and they would like someone else to do it. Someone else to take care of it for them.
Yeah, but China, yeah, so... I mean, we should go into another topic here before I go off, but yeah, okay. Let's talk about something more cheery, like, I don't know, Ontario maybe?
Sure, why not? Let's do that. The Ontario Liberal leadership race, we haven't talked about it too much, but there was some news from last week. So Nate Erskine-Smith and Yasser Naqvi came out with an announcement, more or less saying that they were going to help each other out in terms of getting the vote out on election or leadership voting day or whatever it is. Because a lot of the voting actually is going to be in person, which is, it's not like just mail it in, right? They got centers set up all across the province for people to go vote, which I think is good. I think it's good to have, if you're running a party and you want to get people involved and engaged, I don't think it's good to, give me your name on a website, send something in the mail, never see another living soul that exists in this party. I think it's good that people actually have to go talk with people, see other Ontario Liberals. I think that's a good thing. Anyway, so they're going to do that, and they're inviting their supporters to rank each other second, because it's a ranked ballot. The intent being to block Bonnie Crombie. What do you think of this?
Well, I think... Well, some people would say that it's a desperate move. I don't think it's as desperate as if you have a ranked ballot, this is what you have to do to win. Maybe it's a bit late because there's only 3 weeks left? 3 weeks? Yeah.
Well, voting I think is starting in a week or two. I think voting is because the announcement's on December 2nd. I think voting starts around the 25th or something like that.
Yeah. So it's a bit late in the campaign. The thing is, we haven't seen that many numbers that became public. I know Main Street had some numbers that showed that the Bonnie Crombie was the only one, basically, that gave the Liberals a bump in the polls against the NDP and against the PC. It depends what the average Ontario Liberal voter wants. Do you want really progressive policies that will compete with the NDP, or do you just want to take power again and beat Doug Ford? Doug Ford will be vulnerable in 3 years from now, but again, the PC brand is still very strong to this day. We had one poll from Innovative Research that still had the PCs at, I think it was 40% or 41.
41,
yeah, 41. So the PC brand is still very strong, even though Mr. Ford has taken a few hits. Do you want to be right, or do you want to win? It looks to be the conundrum that Ontario Liberals face right now. Of course, it'd be nice to be right and win, but what do you think? Do you think it could be enough for either of these candidates to have a shot at beating Miss Crombie?
The thing is, I think that doing this in a ranked ballot makes sense, because I think it's important to tell your voters who to back, second or third, and especially if you get someone else to do that, right? Because if you don't give people very clear signals, they might kind of distribute their vote all over the place. In this case, though, I mean, the race has been very clearly Bonnie Crombie versus the rest, right? So a lot of voters probably, especially party members who are very engaged and follow politics, are aware of this. So I'm not sure how many votes it's actually going to move. The fact that they're going to team up for get out the vote efforts, maybe that's a good thing. I think that probably might have a bigger impact. But the thing is that if Bonnie Crombie gets 42%, she's probably going to win on the first eventually, because when you're always going to have some voters that are going to peel off. Like, it's not going to be that 100% of, let's say, NACV's voters are going to rank Erskine Smith second. There will be some that'll go to Crombie. There'll be some who won't rank anybody, and so it matters most if they make sure that she gets 35 or maybe 40 on the first ballot. Because as long as she gets anywhere over 42, I think usually would be a good number, then she'll eventually just win anyway. So what's the strategy to make sure she gets below that number? And that's not clear here.
And also the voters, they do pretty much whatever they want. We have to remember that, yes, those candidates, there's some animosity between the camps, between the Crombie, the non-Crombie candidates.
Yeah, just a little animosity.
But the thing is, I'm not sure that this animosity translates to voters as much, right? They seem to
members, though. I don't know.
Well, yeah, they seem to really dislike each other. But guess what? If, let's say, Miss Crombie does win, and she has a shot to win power in 2026, they're going to fall in line. They're going to fall in line. So some of them might go to the NDP, although, I know there's animosity there between the OLP and the NDP. So Yeah, I just don't think that many voters really feel the same animosity that candidates in a race, in an emotional race. I just don't think it translates as much, but we'll see. It's gonna be interesting. You think 42% would be the sweet spot for Crombie? Because it's possible that she gets 48, right? And then,
yeah, no, I think that she might actually get 53 on the first ballot. I'm just saying, if she's over 42, then I think she probably is going to end up winning. If she's over 45, then it's certain she'll end up winning. But one of the things, like you mentioned about how you can't tell, you can't control your voters. In the 2017 Conservative leadership race, Brad Trost, who was a socially conservative candidate, he told his voters, do not rank anybody else aside from Pierre Lemieux, who was another social conservative at the time. He did not, I think he explicitly said, don't rank like Andrew Scheer. Don't rank these other people. If I don't win, if Pierre Lemieux doesn't win, then, your vote should just be discarded. But a lot of Andrew Scheer's voters, when Brad Trost dropped off, a lot of them came from the Brad Trost camp. So even that explicit do not rank this person.
Yeah.
While some did, there was a bunch of them that didn't rank anybody. A huge amount still just went with, well, who do I like next? I know my guy doesn't like this guy, but I don't think he's that bad. So I think that might be what could happen here. And especially when you had Ted Sue not get in on this, it might signal to a few of his voters that, well, maybe Bonnie Crombie's not so bad. Maybe I can rank them. Maybe I can rank her second or third. So we'll see. But yeah, I feel like... Yeah, you remember him?
Well, I do now, but yeah. Because Andrew Scheer was not a social conservative enough for Mr. Trost. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, well, look, the purity test for people, when you're on the extremes of anything, left or right, that purity test, it's tough. It's tough to pass.
That's true.
There was one thing I wanted to talk about as well that I highlighted, just as a little thing. This is not a Prince Edward Island political podcast, but next election it will become one. But anyway, Jamie Foxx, not the Jamie Foxx, but the Jamie Foxx who's in MLA in PI, he resigned. He's stepping down as the PC MLA. He was a cabinet minister because he got the Conservative nomination in Malpeque, one of the 4 ridings in PI. I find it interesting, one, that they've named him theoretically 2 years out from the election, but I wonder how many more of these we're going to see. There was David Brazil, who was the former interim PC leader in Newfoundland and Labrador. He announced he's going to step down. It seems like he's got some actual health issues that he has to deal with. But he said that if my health improves, then I might be interested in a federal run. I'm wondering how many people are looking at the numbers, looking at projections like yours, seeing like, I could become the minister here. PI is going to have a minister. Could be me. Newfoundland and Labrador is going to have a minister. Who better than me? I'm a former interim party leader. I wonder how many of these figures we're going to see come out of the woodwork from the provincial level, municipal level, putting their names forward because they think, I'm going to be in the federal cabinet of Pierre Poilievre.
That's right.
All I need to do is quit my job here.
And Malpeque would be winnable for the Conservatives. I mean, you look at the history, the recent history. Yeah, okay, the Liberals won it by almost 50 points in 2015, but it was only an 8-point margin 2 years ago. And I mean, we don't have polls specifically of Prince Edward Island, but we've seen a big shift in Atlantic provinces, and we assume some of that at least bleeds into Prince Edward Island. So, interesting move. And I think for the federal Conservatives, yeah, you would like to have some people who have proven that they can be elected, even if it's in a small riding, that have some experience, the ground game experience especially. So, yeah, it's an interesting move. Absolutely.
Okay, let's do some questions.
Yes.
We got, again, we're getting a lot of questions, which is really good. And then it makes it tough for us because we have to not do some of your questions. So we asked for questions for people on the Patreon and in our Discord, and you can become a member of our Patreon at thenumberspod.ca for as little as $3 a month for the Patreon, $5 if you want to get the exclusive episodes of the numbers that we do every second week. Anyway, so we got a number of questions. One of them I wanted to do, maybe we'll do that one last because it's a bit more fun. But Ali Gersoy on the Discord, he asked, what are the precedents for an incumbent outgoing prime minister losing their own seat And how safe is Justin Trudeau in Papineau in 2025?
Just
So
just before you get to answer that, Eric, because I know you've done some research,
Yes.
right?
I came prepared.
You came prepared, and good for you. When I saw that question, I just, from the top of my head, aside from Kim Campbell, I could not think of a PM losing an election and losing their own seat. Then you did the research, and I'm really curious to know what you came up with, because from the top of my head, I could not think of anyone.
Okay, so in terms of losing the election and the seat, some of these lost the election and their seat. But also some of them won the election and lost their seat. You think of Robert Bourassa, that happened to him,
but
right?
okay, but I was thinking at federal level, but sure.
But I'm just using that as an example. Okay. So PMs, prime ministers. There was Kim Campbell, as you said, in 1993. Yep. She lost in Vancouver Centre. The previous one before that was Mackenzie King in 1945.
Wow.
He was running in Prince Albert in Saskatchewan, and he lost there by about 129 votes for the CCF, and then he had to run in a by-election in Glengarry to get a seat in the House. Before that, I'll start at the beginning, maybe. So the first one, I'm pretty sure this is correct. There's only these 5 cases. First one was 1921. Arthur Meehan, who was the incumbent Conservative Prime Minister, he lost in Portage-la-Prairie. He lost to a Progressive, and he had to come back with a by-election in Grenville, though at this point his government had been defeated. So he returned to the House as the opposition leader.
Okay.
In 1925, Mackenzie King, again, lost in York North. This was a riding in the Toronto area, or just outside Toronto. He lost to the Conservatives, and to get a seat, he had to go to Prince Albert in Saskatchewan. So that's how he ended up in Saskatchewan for the 1930s and up until he was defeated in 1945. He actually ran against John Diefenbaker in one of those elections. And then the other case, the last one, is again Arthur Meehan, 1926, Portage-la-Prairie. He lost to the Liberals. So there are 5 cases, 3 prime ministers, and it was Meehan in 21, King 25, Meehan again in 26. So it was tough being a prime minister in the 1920s. So that's the precedent. So now you answer, Trudeau and Papineau, what do you think?
Here's the thing. Trudeau is not as unpopular in Quebec. He's not really popular in Quebec, but he's not as unpopular as elsewhere in Canada. And in Montreal, the Liberals are still doing fine. So considering that Mr. Trudeau won, I think, by 26 points, I think it was last time around, I do not see the voters of Papineau voting for another party than the Liberals, especially if there's a Trudeau on the ballot. Now, let's say Trudeau is not there. Papineau was not a Liberal fortress before Justin Trudeau. It was actually a Bloc Québécois seat before. Now, the demographic of Montreal has changed, so the Bloc Québécois would be very hard. I think the NDP could have a shot at winning this eventually, but I strongly doubt, and you can roll the tape if I'm wrong in 2 years, but I strongly doubt that Mr. Trudeau could lose Papineau. It's too good of a riding for the Liberals and for himself.
You might not know this offhand, so if you don't, it's okay. But provincially, who owns these ridings? Is it Quebec Solidaire territory or is it Liberal territory?
It's half and half Quebec Solidaire and the Liberals. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not nationalist parties. So.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, so we'll do this one maybe just quickly from Jaybird on the Discord asked, what do we say about the Green polling? Nanos had them at double digits, apparently very high in Atlantic Canada. I didn't see the regional numbers, but Abacus has had them up a little bit as well. What do you think? I don't think much of this.
Well, here's the thing. While I understand Green supporters to be very excited to see double digits somewhere, because it is strange and it is new, and I understand how supporters sometimes can think, don't forget that the Nanos tracking, although I do give it a good rating, the Nanos tracking is 1,000 cases per 4 weeks. So every week you take 250 cases, which means that it's basically 15 people from Atlantic Canada. From all 4 Atlantic provinces, it's 15 people every week. So it fluctuates a whole lot. So perhaps on those 2 weeks, it just happens that the Nano scholars got people in, Fredericton or PEI that like the Greens. It has to be sustained to be real. So I would tell my Green friends, and I have Green friends, to take a chill pill, to relax. Maybe you have some former disappointed Liberals, especially disappointed Liberals about the carving and carbon tax that could jump to the Greens. But it's not real if it's not sustained. And if it's not real, if it's seen by several pollsters.
Yeah,
so
that's it. We're not seeing other polls consistently putting them at 7-8% nationwide. I'd say that they're no longer at the 2 to 3% level anymore. They're now in the 4 to 5.
Yep.
But I don't see a big wave. I think this is more just a statistical variation.
But there is an
Yeah,
opportunity for the Greens. I mean, if the Liberals really are down and they're having trouble with those who believe that climate warming is the most important thing, there's an opportunity or a door wide open for the Greens. I'm just saying those polls, be careful here. So
here, let me do these. We'll put these two questions together because they both kind of relate to a similar thing. So Andrew Charlton on the Discord asked, what do we think are the chances that the PQ would force through an independence referendum if they were elected to a minority government? And RTC asked on the Discord, what do you think the odds are that the Quebec Conservatives could hold the balance of power in a potential PQ or CEQ minority government or play spoiler? So this is kind of minority kind of world. So you can link those two together or not. They're kind of separate. But just the fact that we're talking about how a minority could work out in the National Assembly if that happens in 2026.
It's so great that Quebec voters think about these scenarios 3 years in advance. It's really amazing. Okay, so Parti Québécois wins a minority, a plurality of seats in the National Assembly in 2026. Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon has been adamant, and we're getting to a point where it would be very hard for him to walk this back. He said, if we get to power, we will have an independence referendum sooner rather than later. If it's a minority, then I'm guessing that to go through a referendum, to have the question, to organize a referendum, you would need the agreement of the National Assembly. I'm pretty sure Québec Solidaire, even though there's just a dozen seats or maybe 10 seats, would go along with it. It would break Québec Solidaire for sure, but I think these MNAs would follow along. And you would see some CAQ people being, you know what, I played the coalition game for a long time, but we lost power. I'm actually a sovereigntist. So it is possible. But also I think for Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, it could be the carrot and a stick thing. It could be like, well, we need a majority, and if we have a majority, we'll have a referendum, and then you campaign on that to get your majority. It could be very interesting. I don't know, am I straying off path here? What do you think, Eric?
No, I think that's right. I think that I imagine that they put forward a bill that says that we want to have a referendum. They have some sort of agreement maybe with Quebec Solidaire about what it would be. Though Quebec Solidaire wants a constituent assembly to talk about things before going to a referendum. If I understand their process, it's a bit complicated. Yeah. So as you said, it might, whether the Quebec Solidaire would get on with just a straight-on referendum, I'm not sure. And as you said, it could also have some real repercussions within the party. But then what would the CEQ do? Would they have an open vote on this? I feel like it would just destroy the party.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So I absolutely see that the PQ would do this, but whether they would actually be able to get majority of MNAs behind it, would all depend on the results of the election. But I think that they would certainly try. Now, what about the Conservatives?
Yeah.
Because I think with the kind of numbers that we see lately, 3-4 seats, completely reasonable. Could that be the balance of power in a National Assembly? I don't see why not. Could be.
The thing is, the balance of power, but just to look at the question, it's not like there's no like coalition-ish. The last two minority governments that we had in Quebec, the Charest government in 2007 and the Marois government in 2012, there was no coalition. So we're not talking about that here. The PCQ having the balance of power, yeah, but they would not be alone there. If it is a minority government, we expect Québec Solidaire to have the balance of power as well. So you have the right of the right and then the left of the left having the balance of power. It could be for some. We could be in for some really good theater. So to answer the question, it is possible, but the PCQ itself, I think, would not be ready to go into any coalition because that's not their gig. That's not what they do. So.
And it would also be interesting to think about how that could work out, because in the minority parliaments in before assemblies, there weren't as many parties, and there weren't these kind. But like if you imagine a scenario where the CAQ could go to either the Conservatives or the Liberals or the PQ on different measures, that gives them lots of different options, right? And for the PQ, it's harder to see where they would find common ground with the Conservatives, but they could find common ground with the CAQ on some issues, with Quebec Solidaire on some issues. So you can kind of imagine a kind of fluid minority legislature where it's case by case. Sometimes it's an economic issue, so the Liberals back it. Others, it's an identity issue, and the PQ or the CAQ backs it, and there you go. And that's how that could play out.
We would be very busy if that's the case, because we would have to increase the frequency of our Les Chiffres podcast if that happens. But we'll see. Everything in its time. So
yeah. How about we'll get through these last two pretty quick. Adam Keith, with the rise. With the PQ on the rise with the robust sovereignist agenda, do you think the PLQ has a chance to revive its standing with Francophone Federalists, or is it more likely that the CAQ becomes a party of Francophone Federalists? That seems to be the debate right now in Quebec, and the consensus seems to be that maybe this will boost the Liberals, but for the CAQ, it's just hard to see them as the pro-Canada party.
Yeah. We do not know the answer to that question. Very good question, Adam. For now, we do not know, because we do not know who the leader of the Liberals is or will be. But at some point, the Liberals are going to get the leader. We'll see if they make a mistake or if they choose somebody of quality. I would say, though, if the Parti Québécois really gets up there, not 25 or 26, but let's say low 30s, and suddenly really challenges for power, first it's going to break the CAQ. The CAQ will not be sustained in such an environment, because you have many prominent cabinet ministers who are not sovereigntists. But then on the other side, you have Bernard Drinville and others who are sovereigntists that are just holding back right now. They just accepted that, okay, it's not on the table. If it goes back on the table, the CAQ is going to break in half. And then the Liberals, if they have a good leader, good Francophone leader, they could have a chance to say, listen, we told you that it would come back, and we will defend the no side, the Federalist side. And also the Liberals, they kind of have an opportunity with the economic argument. Because when they left power in 2018, when they were beaten, they left the CAQ huge surpluses. And now the CAQ is just dealing with these union negotiations, and they just had an economic statement last week that said, oh, we don't have any money, we're broke, we have to be very careful, we're just on the edge of a recession. And I could see the Liberals both saying, the PQ is back, you need us, and look what the CAQ has done to Quebec's economy. So there is an opportunity there. It's just that they need the right messenger, they need the right leader. And of course, right now, the interim leader, M. Tanguay, is not hit. So
let's do this last question that I wanted to do from Will Dick on Patreon.
Yes.
He said, the last podcast, both of you were talking about the dippers. I've heard the expression before, but I have no idea where it comes from. Can you give us a history lesson? So I'm not sure if there's much of a history in it, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think that I'm pretty certain that the term dipper, referring to New Democrats, simply comes from NDPer, DPer, dipper. I don't think it's any more complicated than that. It's used in more political circles. It's used on the Hill. Journalists would refer to dippers that way. It's not really something that you would say more kind of in a professional setting, which is probably why we shouldn't use it too much. It's also, I think, seen as a little bit of a pejorative term. Like there's lots of kind of insults that have dipper or dip, dip. Anyway,
like a moderate. Would you say it's like a modest slur? It's like.
No, I wouldn't. I don't know if it goes that far, because I think because people will just use it just because it's easier to say than
colloquial
New Democrats but it's a term we should probably try not to use. In the same way that I don't use Tories when we're talking about federal conservatives, because it's just not very. But our tendency is to use dipper. But anyway, that's where I think it comes from. I don't think it's any more complicated than that.
I don't use Tories because Tories died in 2003. For me, the Tories is the progressive conservatives.
I'll sometimes use them when we're talking about like provincial PCers, because they use that term out there. But yeah, I don't think there's any federal conservatives who are Tories. Anyway, that's the term for dipper.
So, Eric, I have a quiz for you.
Okay.
I think it's a quick one, but I think many of our listeners have noticed that you lost a very close battle with the very first quiz and haven't missed since. And so we argued that perhaps our quizzes, although always fun, were a little too easy. So I have one for you here.
I got to say, the last weeks I did pretty well.
Oh, yeah.
It was a tightrope, and I still beat it.
I thought I increased the difficulty, but you still beat them. So if you beat this one, I'm not sure we'll do quizzes again. So, all right, we'll see. So it's a very simple game. There's 7 rounds. I will give you a party and a year of a general election. And A, B, or C, you tell me who had the most seats, period. That's it.
Okay.
Who had the most seats, not in relative terms, but in absolute terms. So the absolute numbers.
I see.
Okay. There's one twist. I know that many of our listeners and members want to play along. So I will not tell you right away if you got the answer right or wrong. There are 7 rounds. We're going to go through all 7. And then I'm going to give you your score. And with that, you will have an opportunity to change some of your answers. And then I will give you your final score. A 5 out of 7 is a tie. A win has to be 6 or 7 out of 7 because you do have a chance to change your answers once you know your final score. Are you ready, my friend?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. All right, let's get some music. There you go. So, who had the most seats in those general elections? Round number 1. Frank McKenna's New Brunswick Liberals in 87. John Horgan's BC NDP in 2020. Or Preston Manning's Reform Party in 1997.
1997. Okay. All right. So McKenna got, I believe, 57 seats in that election. Horgan got, oh boy, he also got in the high 50s, 56. Reform did a little bit better than they did in 93. So 93 they won 52. Did they get up to 60? I think they got up to 60. So I'm going to say it was Preston Manning's Reform Party in 1997, federal election.
Okay, I'm punching this in. We'll see if you're right at the end. Round number 2.
I don't like this. I like knowing how I'm doing. Okay, keep going.
Round number 2. Who had the most seats? Gordon Campbell's BC Liberals in 2001. Bill Davis's Ontario PCs in 1971. Or Peter Lougheed's Alberta PC in 1982.
Okay, I'll try. I'm trying to vocalize my thinking. So 1982. Okay, so the legislature at that point would have been somewhere in the 70s, and there would have been a very small opposition. So the PCs are probably around 70 seats. There was only 2 seats that went to the NDP in 2001 in the BC election, but how many seats were there in the legislature? I think, again, it was 70.
Oh, I
79.
I took close results to
And then the last one you said was
Bill Davis's Ontario PC in 1971.
That one I'm not even sure. There, I think they won a majority, so they would have had a decent amount of seats. I think I'm going to say Gordon Campbell's BC Liberals in 2001.
Okay, Gordon Campbell's. I'm touching this.
I don't like this.
Round number 3. Oh, by the way, not all the choices will be winners. So far they have been, right? But they won't all be. All right. Round number 3. Who won the most seats? Mike Harris's Ontario PCs in 1999.
That was a big one.
Pauline Marois' Parti Québécois in 2012. Or Ralph Klein's Alberta PC in 1993.
Oh boy. Okay, so 93, the PCs had their closest near-death experience before they actually died. The Liberals did well in that election, so I don't think it would have been them. Pauline Marois in 2012, how many seats did she win? It was less than a majority, so she would have had in the, I think it was 54 or something like that. And then the other case was, remind me?
Mike Harris, Ontario PC, 1999.
Well, they won a majority there, so I think it's going to have to be Mike Harris, PC, 1999.
Okay, punching this in. All right. Round number 4. Brad Wall's Saskatchewan Party in 2011. Danny Williams' Newfoundland and Labrador PC in 2007. Or David Peterson's Ontario Liberals in 1985.
All right, so the Ontario Liberals got, I think, 48 seats. The legislature in Newfoundland and Labrador in 2007, you said?
That's right.
Was around 48, and they won nearly all of them. So they, again, would have been probably too low. And then it was, sorry, what was the last one?
Bradwell, Saskatchewan Party in 2011.
There, the legislature 61 seats, and the NDP would have won. So again, a high 40s. Oh man, these are tough. I'm gonna say it is Bradwell, Saskatchewan Party, 2007.
Okay, I'll punch that in. We're four rounds in. All right, round number 5. John Savage's Nova Scotia Liberals in 93. Mario Dumont's ADQ in 07. Or Roy Romano's Saskatchewan NDP in 95.
Okay, so the 95 was, I think, very close, and they needed support of the Liberals. ADQ, I'm pretty sure, won 41 seats in 2007. And John Savage, I have no idea how many seats they would have won. Oh, boy.
That's a slight to our Nova Scotian listeners.
Sorry.
Okay.
I'm going to choose, for that reason, I'm going to choose John Savage and the Nova Scotia Liberals.
All right.
Put in faith.
Okay. Round number 6. Who won the most seats? François Legault's CEQ in 2012. Grant Mitchell's Alberta Liberals in 1997. Or Sharon Carstairs' Manitoba Liberals in 1988.
Oh God. Okay, so the
I agree
Liberals
that
in '88.
this is getting harder and harder. Right?
This is tough. Liberals in '88, I think, won around. I think they won around 20 seats. Legault in 2012, I think they won 19, something like that. And then Grant Mitchell in 1997. I can't imagine they won that many seats. I'm going to say it was Sharon Carstairs, Manitoba Liberals, 1988.
Sharon Carstairs. Okay, punching that in.
This is a challenge. This one's tough.
This one is tough. Okay, round number 7, last round. Gilles Ducep's Bloc Québécois in 2000. Tim Hudak's Ontario PC in 2011. Or André Boisclair's Parti québécois in 07.
Okay. So the PQ finished third in that election, and I think they were in the mid-30s, like 35. Bloc in 2000, I think, won 38 seats because they always still won a majority. And I don't think Hudak reached 40 seats. So I'm going to say Gilles Duceppe Bloc Québécois in 2000.
Okay. All right. So we're done through 7 rounds. So here's this deal. Your score, you have 5 correct out of 7.
No.
Okay, so it's a tie. I think it's a really good score, but according to the rules of my game that I made up, it's a tie. So you have 2 wrong. I'm gonna go quickly through all of them. You can change your answers if you wish to. So, round number 1, McKenna, New Brunswick Liberals in 87, Oregon, NDP 2020, or Preston Manning Reform. You chose Preston Manning's Reform, that's in 97. Do you keep that answer?
Yeah, I'm going to keep that.
Okay. It's round number 2. Gordon Campbell's BC Liberals in 01, Bill Davis's Ontario PC in 71, or Peter Lougheed's Alberta PCs in 82. You chose Gordon Campbell in 01.
I'm going to stick with that one too.
You're sticking with that one? All right. Round number 3. It was Mike Harris in 99, Pauline Marois in 012, and Ralph Klein's in 93. You picked Mike Harris. Do you want to keep it? Oh,
yes.
Has it hit this? You keep it?
Yes.
All right. Round number 4. You chose, number 4 was Bradwell's Saskatchewan Party in 11, Danny Williams' PC in 07, or David Peterson's Liberals in 85. You chose Bradwell. Do you want to keep that?
No, I'm going to change that to Peterson.
You're going to change that to Peterson. Okay, let's punch that in. Okay. All right, number 5 was John Savage, Nova Scotia Liberals in 93, Mario Dumont's ADQ in 07, Roy Romano, Saskatchewan NDP in 95, and you picked John Savage. Do you want to keep that?
No, I'm going to switch it to ADQ.
Switch it to the ADQ. Okay. And round number 6, it was François Legault in 012, Grant Mitchell's Alberta Liberals in 97 or Sharon Carstairs Liberals in 88, and you chose the Manitoba Liberals in 88.
I'll stick with Carstairs. Yeah.
All right, and the last one, the round 7. It was Gilles Ducep's Bloc Québécois in 2000, Tim Hudak's Ontario PC in 11, or André Boisclair in 07, and you picked Gilles Ducep's Bloc Québécois. You want to keep that?
Yeah, I feel good about that one.
Okay, all right. Now your score is 4 out of 7.
Oh, Which one?
All right. So I'm sad to say that this time around, Eric lost in overtime. So is there the opposite of applauding? Anyway.
I can find some views.
So let me go through them. It was Preston Manning's Reform Party in 97. They won 60 seats. Frank McKenna won.
That was good.
That's what you said. It was really good. Frank McKenna won 58, and John Horgans in 2020 won 57. Round number 2, Gordon Campbell won 77 seats. Peter Aheed won 75, and Bill Davis's PC won 78. So you got this one wrong. Round number 3, it was Mike.
Really? Davis won 78. Damn it. Okay.
Mike Harris won 59 seats in 99. Pauline Marois won 54, and Ralph Klein won 51. So you got this one right. You chose Harris. Round number 4, Danny Williams won 44 seats in 07. David Peterson's in Ontario Liberals won 85. And Brad Walls won, in 85 won 48 seats. And Brad Walls, Saskatchewan Party, won 49 seats. And so you had the right answer and you switched it. Unfortunately, that's a miss. John Savage won 40 seats. Mario Dumont won 41. And you said
41. See, I was right. Yeah.
Roy Romano won 42. So it was Roy Romano. That's the wrong one. Round number 6, François Legault in 012 won 19 seats. Grant Mitchell's Alberta won 18 seats. And Sharon Carstairs in Manitoba, the Liberals, in 88 won 20 seats. And you did say 20 seats.
Hey, I said 20 exactly. And 19 for Legault, I said.
That's right. Gilles Duceppe won 38 seats. So it was Quebec in half, basically, in 2000. Tim Hudak won 37 seats. And André Boisclair won 36 seats. So you got this one right. So it was a very tough quiz, and you lost in overtime, which I think you'd still get a point when you lose in overtime. So round of applause for Eric, because that was really tough. Congratulations, Eric. You almost won. This was really hard. So anyway.
Okay. Let's move on to the numbers of the week. Let's finish this off quickly because I'm upset. Here, let me go first. My number is going to be 58%. This was the negative impression score for Justin Trudeau in the Abacus poll, and it was also the government disapproval number, so 58%. What was interesting is that Harper's was around 50% negative impression when Abacus did the same polling in 2015. So it's you would have thought that maybe Harper's numbers were worse. And, based on if you did like approval ratings polling, it usually was. But because Abacus has that neutral number that they let people choose. So anyway, Trudeau was at 58% negative. Harper was usually around 50. So, and that was when Harper lost. So there you go.
My number is 81. 81% of Canadians are dissatisfied with how the Liberals of Justin Trudeau are handling the affordable housing crisis. I think this is the number one issue in the minds of Canadians. Not I think, but the numbers suggest that it is. And it is the worst score among... Léger did a poll with several actions that the Liberals are taking. And on affordable housing, it is the worst. 81% are dissatisfied. Only 11% are satisfied. Major challenge for the next 2 years for the Liberals.
Yeah, that's not going to go away, and they can't probably fix it in 2 years. So anyway, so that'll be it for this episode, and we'll be back next week with our patrons-only episode. And if you don't want to miss it, you can go to the Patreon page at thenumberspod.ca, and if you become a member, you get access to the numbers every Thursday. We put them up on Thursday for our members. It goes out to Friday for public when they're public episodes. We have the exclusive episodes every 2 weeks, and you get to participate in the Discord, which keeps growing, and people keep participating. So that's been a lot of fun. So
yeah,
if you've already signed up,
absolutely,
thanks very much. We appreciate your support. And Philippe, I'm looking forward to next 2 weekends from now. It'll be interesting to see how that convention is going to shake down, and to actually see you in person.
I know it's been a while. Yeah. I'm looking forward to see what we'll record. I'm gonna make some phone calls and try to have some QS people on the record to speak to us. So it's gonna be fun.
All right.
Merci beaucoup tout le monde. Merci beaucoup Eric. Have a great day. Have a great weekend.